In recent years, the belief that God doesn't exist has increased, and I say belief because until it is proven that this being doesn't exist, it is only that, a belief.
Do prosecutors start from guilty until proved innocent? Do scientists have to show a hypothesis isn't true or will treat it as fact? Of course not, and with good reason. And it's not our job to disprove God. If you deity distractors weren't talking about it so much, we wouldn't even be having the conversation. But you made the claim, so it's up to you to prove you're not blowing smoke out of your butt. Let's do this.
Round 1, fight!
Delusion!
Logic boom! Logic boom!
You win!
Greetings, fellow space travelers, BionicDance here. Today's video is actually not about whose job it is to prove God, even though Skippy here opened with that. He's actually going to make arguments why atheism isn't good enough for him and his religion is better. Not its truth, its utility.
As any belief, this one has its arguments for and against it. And it's my intention in this video to give an argument that demonstrates this belief leads to a nihilistic view of reality.
Does it though? Theists seem to be making this claim about nihilism more and more lately. But what they don't seem to realize is that, wait for it, not everybody is the same. Not everybody is like them. And some people don't react to nihilism the way, say, a Christian might. And nihilism is a term that comes with a lot of baggage. It's assumed by many that, upon reaching a nihilistic viewpoint, it will inevitably lead to individualistic hedonism, crime, and chaos. And maybe it would if this guy and his ilk became nihilists. But, again, not everybody is like him, and some of us have a moral compass that wouldn't even allow for that kind of behavior. And we didn't need religion to get there.
And the most rational thing in moral terms is to do always what maximizes your well-being, even if this means doing wrong things.
But nihilism is the view that there is no objective morality or meaning to life, the universe, and everything. So by what standard is a thing wrong? The way I view morality, and indeed living one's life, is best described by quoting Billy Shakespeare and adding my own little bit at the end, though I'm fairly certain he meant to imply it. All the world's a stage, and the men and women merely players. But there's no script, so we all have to improv. An argument might be made that I'm undermining my own position since I'm a bit of a determinist, so maybe there is a script. But we don't get to see it, practice, or know the ending, so it might as well be so.
The God of the Bible presents us with a reality in which he has a plan for humanity that ends in an eternal world where only good people live in it.
And the reason we should believe that is... Present some non-biblical data against which we can check the Bible's claims, please. Just 'cause it came out of your favorite book, that doesn't make it true. If it did, humanity would have reached Mars and found that it was populated by now, 'cause that happens in my favorite book. And if you want to claim that the Bible isn't sci-fi or fantasy, that it describes reality, remember that even science books are required to provide the kind of checkable data I asked for from you and your Bible.
From these and other Bible verses such as Isaiah 55:11 and John 5:17, we can infer that he is constantly working in the world. That's why we can say that everything that happens to us and in the world has a purpose. If we subscribe to the belief that God doesn't exist, we should guide ourselves by rational reasons and science.
And which of those demands we have faith? Which provides us with facts we can check for ourselves? Spoiler alert, the Bible isn't the one providing the falsifiable claims and the data to show the factual basis on which its assertions are considered true.
But a problem arises. Recent scientific theories lead to different hypotheses such as the Big Freeze or the Big Rip, among others, that say the universe will end.
I really hope he realizes that hypotheses lead to theories, not the other way round. I'm hoping what he means is that conclusions have implications that lead us down new paths to investigate. 'Cause if not, that's pretty chowder-headed. What do you think? Should I give him the benefit of the doubt?
Which means that all human endeavor, all human experience, all human knowledge, everything, will be lost with the end of the universe, which means that everything was for nothing. There is no purpose, no ultimate goal in this life. Nothing is preserved. Everything is lost.
The one thing I have never seen a theist even consider, much less accept, is that this might very well be how it is, and that might very well be tough noogies. The attitude always seems to be that if they don't like it, it must be some other way. And if the universe were fair, that might be so. But if there's one thing I've learned in my mumble years on this planet, it's that life ain't perfect, the universe doesn't give a rat's tiny hiney about us, and that's just that.
This realization leaves the human facing an experience called life which has no meaning and forces us to find our own meaning. Some people find it in pleasure, seeking the good life. Others find it in helping others. Others in the accumulation of wealth and power. But they all have the same end, a death that takes away everything from them. And if they left a legacy, it will disappear with time or with the end of the universe.
And?
So, under this way of seeing reality, how should we act morally? Saying that doing good always brings positive effects to the individual is not true, because sometimes the only thing you get from doing good is the satisfaction of doing it.
And? I could probably spend the whole video asking that. But you'll notice his framing. What does he get for doing a good deed? Not what is the result, but rather what's in it for me. The benefit to the homeless guy getting what looks like a bag full of junk food isn't even part of his thinking.
Or putting common good above your own good sometimes is bad for the individual.
And?
In this way of seeing reality, there is no benevolent God that rewards selfless deeds. So, why should I always do good if these actions not always benefit me, or sometimes are harmful to me in some way? The answer that many people give is because it's the right thing to do.
You know that apocryphal tale of the atheist screaming for God's help when it seems like the plane is crashing, or the idea that there are no atheists in foxholes. This is just that, but repackaged for his purposes. When a theist asks a question about the attitudes of others, they inevitably answer it in a way that I, as an atheist, never would, nor would most atheists I've ever met. I wonder whether he's actually asked this question of a real atheist, or if he's just making assumptions, likely based on something he was told by his church. But his straw man aside, what would I say? I wouldn't say that it was the right thing to do. I'd say that it seemed like the right thing to do. I'd say that it's what I wish someone would do for me if our positions were reversed. In other words, empathy. I'd also acknowledge that the right thing to do for me might not be the right thing to do for someone else, because we all want, need, and value different things. We're not all the same. When something terrible happens, some people desperately want the presence of their loved ones to comfort them, while others would feel smothered by that. If you want easy answers, tough. Life ain't like that. But the central premise of Dude Boy's video seems to be a desperate need for life to be both easy and fair, reality be damned.
Evil deeds are punished by society, or at least the actions society considers wrong. Then, living a life where I only seek my own personal gain without regarding the good or bad nature of my actions would be really difficult, due to all the control society has to maintain a good society, or at least what the majority thinks is good. But the individual could realize that human justice is not perfect, that there are ways to mock human justice, I mean, avoiding the punishment. Then a rational person who seeks his own personal gain could do evil deeds that benefit him as long as he manages well the risk of being caught or judged. If he manages to avoid being punished, he will never be punished by this action, because when he dies everything is over, and the consequences of this action will disappear with time or with the end of the universe. Then, a rational person under this view of reality comes to the conclusion that the best way to live life and get the most out of it is to do good when it benefits you and do evil when it benefits you.
A rational person would also recognize the risks in that behavior. We're not all master criminals. A rational person would also recognize that the evidence points to our lives being finite, that there is no evidence that there's an afterlife. And with that in mind, maximizing pleasure would include recognizing the worldly penalties for misbehavior, and that pleasure would be diminished by spending time in prison, alienating friends and family, and therefore misbehavior would diminish our well-being and pleasure. Plus, in Christianity, being rewarded or punished has nothing to do with your virtues and vices in this life. You get into heaven by believing in God without evidence. Faith in other words, asking for forgiveness from God, not those you've hurt, and pledging your loyalty. If you can commit a crime and be absolved by God just by asking for it, where's the motivation to be good to others? Even if they kill you for treating them badly, you'll be rewarded with heaven if you just bow your head before they do it. Does that sound moral to you?
This view of reality is completely different from the biblical view, where there is a God who is just and merciful and will finally judge every individual and reward or punish them eternally according to their deeds.
That's true. It's different. But the question is not which is better in your never humble opinion. The question is which one is true, which one matches reality. The evidence suggests that there ain't no God, which is why faith is required by Christianity. Part of the Christian worldview seems to be that if reality doesn't match your expectations, reality is superseded by your desires. And that's hardly rational. So again, life ain't fair, and that's just tough.
Which view of reality are you going to believe in? And more importantly, which of these two views is the truth?
The one supported by tons of evidence, whether I like it or not. Until next time, fellow space travelers, this is BionicDance saying don't run on automatic. Instead, please think. Plus, in Christianity, being rewarded or punished has nothing to do with your virtues and almost a blooper-free video. Damn it. You get into heaven by believing in God without evidence. Evidence. Dewey, what the hell are you doing? Get out of the way!
Sandra, this isn't right. There has to be a better way to make money than taking these assassination contracts.
Like what? What do you have in mind?
Well, have you ever considered Patreon?
Patreon? Where people donate money for those videos I'm in? Do you really think that'll pay the bills, Dewey?
Well, if people want to prevent a few international incidents, I'm sure they'll be willing to contribute. After all, what's $1 or $2 per video to forestall the occasional war, right?
Well, I suppose I could give it a try. You'd better be right about this.
Come on, Sandra, let's go home. Sandra!
What? He was right there. I'll start that Patreon thing tomorrow. Promise. People not subscribing to BionicDance is one sign of the apocalypse. Save us all. Subscribe now.